What do you do when your top-performing location suddenly starts slipping and no one gives you a straight answer? Xavier Durney had owned the 13-theater chain for 9 years. He bought it from a retiring couple who had run it for decades. At the time, it was failing. Now, 12 of the 13 theaters were profitable with strong customer ratings and healthy margins. But the location on Fairview Boulevard, the one with the newest equipment and highest foot traffic, had taken a nosedive. Customer complaints had tripled in 3 months. Revenue was down. The district manager, Barry, kept blaming seasonal footfall, but Xavier didn't buy it. He hadn't been in that theater since the grand reopening 2 years ago. Most of the current staff had never even met him. And since all upper management communication happened through internal portals or phone calls, no one would recognize him, especially not with a buzz cut, glasses, facial hair, and a new last name on his application. He signed up as Leo Daniels, a temp concession worker transferred from another location for 2 weeks. He wasn't doing this to play gotcha. He wanted to understand. What was pushing customers away? She guided him through the popcorn station, explained how to handle customer complaints, and showed him where the cleaning supplies were. "You've done this before," she said as he cleaned the butter machine without being asked. "Yeah." Then around a few screens, he said with a grin. They worked a 3-hour block together, and he watched her handle everything from a jammed soda fountain to a lost kid. But something felt off. The other employees were quiet. No jokes. No small talk. Just clock in, do the job, leave. And then there was Mitch. Mitch was the floor supervisor that night. Tall, always on his phone, and barely made eye contact with customers or staff. Twice, Xavier saw him wave off questions from employees, including Pia. Around 7, the lobby got busy. A kid dropped his popcorn, and Xavier knelt to help. That's when he caught it, a tense exchange at the counter. A woman in her 40s was trying to explain something to Mitch. "Excuse me, sir, my son has a disability, and we asked for the captions to be turned on like we were told we could." Mitch barely looked up. "We don't do that. It messes with the system." "But they said." She tried again. "I said we don't do that," Mitch snapped. "You can get a refund if you want, but I'm not changing projector settings for one person." The woman blinked, stunned. Her son, maybe 12, stood silent beside her, holding a fidget toy. Xavier stood frozen. Pia looked over, frowning. The woman turned, eyes glassy, and walked toward the exit with her son. No one stopped her. No one said a word. Xavier's jaw clenched. He walked over to Pia. "Does that happen often?" She hesitated. "Sometimes." He says, "It's not our problem." "Is it?" "No," she whispered. "It's not." Later, in the break room, Xavier sat down with Pia during her 10-minute break. He kept his voice low. "What's going on here, really?" She looked around, then leaned in slightly. "Mitch, he's not mean all the time. But he doesn't care. Like, really doesn't care. People come to him with real issues, and he just shrugs. If you push too hard, he cuts your hours." Xavier frowned. "What about Barry? He's barely here. Maybe once every 2 weeks. They're friends. Mitch covers for him, Barry signs off on stuff. Most of us just try to stay out of the way." A kid burst into the break room, breathless. "Pia," Lines backed up to the door. She jumped up. "Sorry. Gotta run." Xavier sat there a moment longer, anger simmering under his collar. He hadn't come here expecting this. He thought he'd find a lazy staff, maybe a few bad habits. But this was different. Ignoring a customer's request, especially for accessibility? That wasn't just bad service. That was cruel. He stood up and went back to the floor. The next day, he was going to stay longer. Watch more. Ask questions. And then, depending on what he found, he would decide who stayed and who didn't. Xavier arrived 30 minutes early the next morning, still operating under the name Leo Daniels. The sun hadn't even cleared the trees lining the Fairview parking lot. He parked in the far corner, intentionally away from the employee spaces, and walked in through the side door with a quiet nod to the janitor who was unlocking it. Inside, the lobby lights were still dim. A heavy clatter echoed from the storage hallway, someone moving crates. He followed the sound and stopped at the concession stockroom. A boy, maybe 17, was struggling to res-tack a shipment of bottled drinks. He was short, wiry, and sweating through his uniform polo. "You all right?" Xavier asked. The kid startled and looked up. "Yeah, just trying to finish before the open shift comes in. Mitch said I had to restock everything or I'd lose my closing shifts." Xavier stepped forward and helped him lift a crate. "What's your name?" "Zion." "You always do this alone?" Zion shrugged. "Usually. They scheduled me for both close last night and open today, so I just stayed after to finish. Figured it's easier than getting yelled at." Xavier paused. "You slept here?" "Couple hours in the manager's office. Mitch says if we're not fast enough, we're replaceable." Xavier clenched his jaw. "You eat anything?" Zion hesitated, then shook his head. Xavier opened the mini fridge behind the counter, found a granola bar someone had left, and handed it to him. "Here. Don't pass out on me." Zion took it, eyes down. "Thanks." The front doors unlocked at 8. By 8:15, the first customers were already trickling in for the matinees. Pia arrived just before 9, her uniform clean, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She gave Xavier a quick nod, then clocked in. Mitch showed up 20 minutes later, holding a smoothie and wearing sunglasses indoors. He walked straight past the counter, said nothing to the morning crew, and disappeared into the office. Xavier stayed at concessions with Pia and Zion. The first rush hit by 10, and the three of them moved in sync, Pia managing orders, Zion working the register, Xavier manning popcorn. It was busy but smooth, until Mitch came back out. He stood behind them for a few minutes, arms folded, inspecting. Then he pointed at Zion. "You didn't refill the ICCO2 tanks." Zion turned. "I didn't have the key to the storage. I was gonna do it after the rush. You're supposed to have it done before open." "I tried." Mitch stepped closer, voice lowering but sharp. "You're not here to try. You're here to finish what I tell you." Xavier watched Zion's face tighten. He didn't argue, just nodded and stepped away toward the back. Mitch turned to Pia. "And why are you on register?" "You're supposed to be on floor today." Pia stayed calm. "Leo's still learning the register system. It was faster this way. I don't care what's faster. If I assign roles, you follow them. Get out front." She didn't move right away. "You hear me?" Then she nodded once and walked off. After Mitch left, Xavier turned to the drink station. A woman in her 60s was trying to fill a soda, but the machine was sputtering. "Sorry about that," he said, wiping it down. "Let me grab you a cup from the back." She smiled faintly. "Thank you. You're the first person here who's looked me in the eye." He returned with a fresh drink and handed it to her. She reached into her purse and gave him a folded receipt. "I don't usually do this, but this is from a few weeks ago. I came in with my granddaughter. The movie started 25 minutes late, and no one would tell us why. We missed our dinner reservation because of it. I emailed the manager twice. Never got a response." Xavier looked at the receipt. Her name was handwritten at the bottom. L. Fernandez. "I'll make sure someone looks into it," he said. "Don't bother. I only came back because she begged me." He kept the receipt in his pocket. By noon, the lobby was packed. A school group was arriving and the staff was clearly underprepared. Only 2 people were assigned to clean theaters, both visibly overwhelmed. One of them, a middle-aged man with a limp, was trying to carry out trash bags and mop sticky floors between shows. Xavier caught up to him as he exited Theater 5. "Need a hand?" The man looked up, surprised. "You're new." "Leo. I'm just helping out." The man nodded and adjusted his grip on the mop. "I'm Artie. Been here 6 years." Not that anyone notices. They worked side by side in silence for a few minutes, cleaning spilled drinks and discarded wrappers. Artie moved slower than most, but he was methodical. "You always this short-staffed?" Xavier asked. Artie snorted. "Only when Barry's not trying to impress someone. Otherwise, we're ghosts." "Why stay?" Artie shrugged. "Because I care about the people who come here. And because I've got a kid with medical bills. This job's not easy, but it's steady. Or it was." Xavier nodded. "You ever talk to Barry about the staffing?" "Once." He told me to manage my expectations. By mid-afternoon, 3 separate customers had asked for refunds. One cited a broken seat. Another mentioned a soda machine leaking onto the floor. The third had tried to report a man taking photos inside the theater to a staff member and been told to just ignore it. Mitch was nowhere in sight during any of those incidents. Xavier found him in the office behind the locked door on a video call. He knocked once. Mitch waved him off without muting. Xavier walked away. He found Pia in Theater 9, standing near the back with a flashlight, helping a child find their dropped phone. She looked up when he entered. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm used to it." "I'm not." She hesitated. "You're not like the others. I don't think they know what's happening here. They don't want to." Xavier looked around the dark theater. The screen flickered with the opening trailers. The room smelled faintly of mildew. A ceiling tile near the emergency exit sagged visibly. "Do people report this stuff?" She smiled sadly. "Sure. But Barry only comes when corporate schedules an inspection. We clean up for those days, and then it's back to this." He looked at her. "What would you change if you could?" She gave that some thought. "More staff, better training, someone who actually sticks around long enough to learn our names." Xavier nodded and walked back out. At 5:30, he clocked out quietly and left through the side door. He didn't go home. He sat in his car, watching from the far edge of the lot. Mitch stepped out an hour later, laughing on the phone, tossing his smoothie cup into a bush. He walked to a sleek red car, got in, and drove off. Xavier didn't start his engine. Instead, he looked down at the folded receipt from Mrs. Fernandez. He thought about Zion trying to sleep in a stockroom to avoid being yelled at. He thought about Artie limping between theaters, too proud to ask for help. He thought about Pia still shining despite everything. And then he knew exactly what he'd do next. The next morning, Xavier didn't wear a uniform. He walked through the front entrance exactly at 10 sharp, a black button-down tucked into dark jeans, his ID clipped to his belt. He nodded to the box office attendant, who froze mid-sentence in confusion. The name on his badge read Xavier Durney. No aliases. No disguise. He walked through the lobby, scanning the faces of the employees. None of them recognized him for a moment until Pia stepped out of Theater 2 with a broom in hand. She spotted him, blinked, and then her mouth opened slightly. He gave her a small nod, then looked over her shoulder. "Mitch in?" he asked calmly. "He's in the office." "Good." He walked past her and down the hallway where the office door was cracked. He knocked once and stepped inside. Mitch sat with his feet up on the small wooden desk, scrolling through his phone and eating from a bag of pretzels. He didn't look up. "Unless you've got a shipment or a complaint, come back later," he said. "I have both." Mitch looked up, annoyed. His eyes went from Xavier's badge to his face, and then he froze. Xavier shut the door behind him. "I'm sure you've got an explanation for a few things," he said calmly, "but I'd rather you didn't waste my time." Mitch slowly lowered his feet. "I was told last month that this location was performing below standard. I looked at the raw numbers. Then I looked at the turnover rate. Then I came in myself. What I saw was unacceptable." Mitch opened his mouth, but Xavier raised a hand. "You ignored an accessibility request from a paying customer. You threatened to cut a miner's hours for not restocking a cooler he didn't have access to. You've been verbally dismissive, physically absent, and you've created a work environment built on fear, not accountability. You've left employees scrambling to perform basic functions without proper staffing or guidance." Mitch stood slowly, his face tightening. "I didn't know who you were. If you had concerns, you could have come to me directly. I did. I was the guy cleaning the butter machine next to you. I was the one you brushed off when a woman came to you for help. That was your chance." Mitch's lips parted, but no words came out. Xavier stepped closer. "Effective immediately, you're done here. Your dismissal is final. Collect your things. I'll have someone escort you out." "You're firing me?" Mitch's voice cracked. "You were given authority, not immunity. You lost the right to lead the moment you decided your comfort mattered more than your team." Mitch didn't speak again. He stared at Xavier for a long moment, then reached for his backpack. By the time he walked out of the office, escorted by a regional HR rep Xavier called in that morning, the lobby had gone silent. Pia stood near the concession counter, broom still in hand. Zion leaned against the back wall, watching with narrowed eyes. Artie was halfway out of Theater 4, mop in hand, frozen mid-step. Xavier walked into the center of the lobby and looked around at the staff. "My name is Xavier Durney. I'm the owner of this theater. And I'm not here to lecture anyone." He paused, giving them space to process. "I came undercover because I stopped trusting the reports I was getting. What I found was a group of employees doing their best with no direction, no support, and no recognition. That ends today." He looked at Pia. "You step into the office with me." She followed him silently. Inside, he motioned for her to sit. He took the seat across from her. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You've been holding this place together, and I let someone like Mitch represent the standard. That's on me." Pia shook her head. "It's not your fault. You weren't here. That's the problem. I wasn't here." He leaned forward. "I'm offering you the acting supervisor position, starting today. Full pay bump, full authority. We'll give you training and resources, but I trust your instincts. You've earned this." Her eyes widened. She started, then caught herself. "Thank you. I'm also bringing in a temporary operations lead from another theater to support you. You won't be doing this alone." She nodded slowly, still stunned. When they stepped back out, Xavier called the rest of the staff into the break room. It was a tight fit, but everyone came: Zion, Artie, even the box office girl who'd barely looked up yesterday. They stood in a loose circle, waiting. "I met most of you without knowing your names," Xavier said. "That changes now." He gestured to Zion. "You showed up early, stayed late, and got no credit. That ends today. You're getting a full schedule review and priority shifts, no more doubles unless you request them. And you're getting a raise." Zion's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. Xavier turned to Artie. "You've been here longer than most of us. I watched you clean 6 theaters by yourself yesterday. That's not acceptable. Starting this week, we're hiring 2 more crew members for cleaning and maintenance. You'll be part of their training and get a title bump for it." Artie nodded slowly, lips pressed together like he didn't trust himself to speak. Xavier looked around the room. "I'm not here for applause. I'm here to fix what I broke by staying away too long. I'll be working from this location for the next 3 weeks. Every shift, every day. If you have concerns, you bring them to me or Pia. No more pretending nothing's wrong." He paused. "We lost customers because of how we treated them. Some of them may never come back. But we're not going to lose each other." The room was quiet. Then slowly, conversations bubbled up. Zion whispering to the box office girl. Artie clapping Pia on the shoulder. For the first time since he walked into the building, Xavier saw people relax. Over the next few hours, he got to work. He sat with the janitorial supplier to confirm faster delivery schedules. He called the caption system vendor to verify that all theaters could toggle closed captions on demand. He set up a direct customer feedback email that went to him and Pia only. No filters. No delays. At 3, a customer asked if the escalator was working again. This was the 3rd time Xavier had heard that question. He walked outside, found the out-of-order sign tucked behind a trash can, and called the property manager. The repair order had been sitting for 6 days with no follow-up. He escalated it personally. At 4, a mother came in with her daughter who had vision impairment. Xavier approached them at the ticket counter, introduced himself by name, and offered to escort them to their seats. He personally adjusted the projector settings to accommodate low light visibility and confirmed with the projectionist that it wouldn't affect anyone else's view. The woman thanked him softly. The daughter smiled. By 5, the energy in the building had changed. Staff were still hustling, but there was conversation again. People moved with purpose, not fear. Xavier stepped into the break room for a 5-minute pause. Pia was there, leaning against the counter with a half-eaten protein bar. "You're adjusting fast," he said. "I've been ready for this for a while. I just didn't know anyone was watching." "I was. I just waited too long to act." She looked at him. "You think it's going to stick?" He nodded once. "It will. Because this time I'm not disappearing after the cameras turn off." She gave a thoughtful nod and stood up straight. "I'm going to check on Theater 7. They had a sound issue last week. He smiled faintly. Good call. Pia walked out. Xavier leaned back in the chair, looking at the wall where the staff schedule was posted. He didn't need to see numbers to know the change had begun. It was in the way Zion laughed with a coworker near concessions. In the way Artie took a slower stride, not from fatigue, but from comfort. In the way customers lingered instead of rushing out. He'd come undercover to find what was broken. He stayed to rebuild what mattered. 3 weeks passed. Xavier kept his word. He showed up for morning prep, stayed through closing checks, and rotated between the front lobby, projection booths, and cleaning shifts. He didn't carry a clipboard or bark orders. He worked. Quietly. Consistently. And people noticed. The theater didn't transform overnight. But it changed. Schedules were adjusted to match actual traffic patterns. Equipment repairs were tracked in real time. A second maintenance hire joined Artie, and both men split the workload with fewer 12-hour days. Zion got paired with a new hire named Rachel, a sharp, observant girl who'd come from the downtown location. He trained her himself, and within a week, the register lines were moving noticeably faster. Pia held daily huddles before, open, short, focused, no fluff. The difference wasn't flashy. It was functional. And that's what mattered. On a Thursday morning, Xavier arrived before the doors opened and found Pia already inside, standing in the projection booth, watching a test reel play across Theater 3's screen. You're not scheduled until 11, he said, stepping in behind her. I couldn't sleep, she said. I had a thought about the audio delay in this room. I think it's tied to the HDMI splitter. I'm testing it with a different unit. He watched the picture flicker slightly, then stabilize. You always this technical? I used to help my uncle install home theater systems. He taught me how to listen for distortion. He nodded, then paused. I'm putting in a request for a full equipment audit across all 13 locations. I want you consulting on it. Paid hours. You'll work with our vendor directly. She turned toward him. That's real. It is now. She smiled faintly, then gestured to the monitor. Still some lag. But I'll get it right. That afternoon, a man in his 50s approached the box office. He wore a faded jacket and held a printed ticket confirmation. His voice was soft, but firm. I reserved 2 seats for the 4 o'clock, and I need to make sure there's space for my wife's chair. She's coming from physical therapy and can't sit in a standard seat. The new girl at the desk looked over the layout, her brow furrowing. Looks like Theater 6 has 2 accessible spots open. Would you prefer back or front row? He hesitated. Back, if possible. She nodded, adjusted the reservation, and picked up the phone. A few minutes later, Xavier met the couple at the door. He didn't introduce himself by title. He guided them to the back row, ensured the folding seat was stowed properly, and confirmed the audio levels. As he walked back into the lobby, Pia met him near the soda machines. They're starting to trust us again, she said. He nodded. We've got more to earn. That evening, Barry showed up. He hadn't been seen since Mitch's dismissal. No one had contacted him directly. Xavier wanted to see what would happen when the chain of command was disrupted. 3 weeks of silence. Then, without warning, Barry walked through the doors in a pressed shirt and polished shoes, holding a clipboard. He approached Xavier near the entrance confidently. I heard there was a situation here, he said. I was out of town for a while. Thought I'd come by and assess things myself. Xavier didn't shake his hand. You were copied on every report, he said evenly. Not once did you respond. I didn't know how serious it was. That's the problem. Barry looked past him at the staff uniforms cleaner, floor traffic flowing better, customers actually lingering. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Well, he said, seems like things are improving. Xavier didn't move. They are. Without you. Barry shifted. I've been with this company for 10 years. And in that time, you allowed a supervisor to drive away multiple customers, ignore safety protocols, cut hours as punishment, and intimidate staff into silence. You signed off on every monthly report without investigation. You act like I did it on purpose. You didn't have to. Neglect is enough. Barry's expression hardened. So what, this is a warning? No, Xavier said calmly. This is your final day. You're being dismissed for dereliction of duty and breach of leadership standards. You've got no basis. I've got 3 weeks of first-hand evidence. Staff statements. Customer complaints. and a system log showing you hadn't logged into the internal portal in nearly 2 months. Barry's mouth opened, then shut. Xavier stepped aside. You can leave now. HR will follow up with your severance documentation. Barry didn't argue. He turned and walked out. Pia approached a few minutes later, keeping her voice low. Did he really think no one would notice? He didn't think anyone would check. Later that night, Xavier called a quiet meeting in Theater 10. Not a formal announcement, just a moment to acknowledge the shift. He stood at the front of the theater. The lights dimmed low. Pia sat near the aisle. Zion and Rachel were side by side in the second row. Artie leaned against the wall with crossed arms. This place has always had potential, Xavier said. But culture doesn't fix itself. Systems don't enforce themselves. Takes people who care. He looked at each of them. You've shown what that looks like. Not with words, but with action. That's what this company needs more of. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small stack of envelopes. Starting next quarter, we're launching an internal mentorship program. Each of you will be eligible to train team leads at other locations. You'll be paid for the work, and those hours will count toward promotion eligibility. He handed the envelopes out one by one. Inside, formal offers, bonus acknowledgments, and a personal note from him. Artie opened his slowly, reading in silence. I never trained anyone before, he said. You've been training people for years, Xavier replied. You just weren't given credit. Zion glanced at his and looked up. This says I'm being recommended for assistant shift lead training? You earned it. Not just for how you work, but for how you treat people. The room was quiet. Then Pia stood. We're not perfect yet, she said. But I think we're finally moving in the right direction. The others nodded. As the meeting ended, they filed out slowly. No rush. No tension. Just quiet momentum. Xavier stayed behind, sitting in the back row watching the empty screen. This wasn't the ending of anything. It was the stabilizing of something fragile that had finally been given the attention it deserved. The projector lights hummed softly above. The floors were clean. The lobby was calm. And for the first time in months, the Fairview Theater wasn't just operational. It was whole.